What's up, everybody? Tuesday afternoon, 2 days and change before the start of the 2020 NFL Draft. I'm excited. If you're watching this video, there's a 99% chance that you're excited. And before we get to the draft, I have to finalize my thoughts on what I want my team, probably your team if you're watching this video, the Seattle Seahawks, what I want them to do in this draft. So I've made a lot of videos about the offseason. I've made a lot of videos about the draft. I've gone through a whole bunch of different scenarios, gone through different combinations and permutations, talked about needs, talked about wants. It's time to put it all together into some mock drafts. And I couldn't just make one. As much as I would like to be able to synthesize all my thoughts into a single solitary mock draft of 7, maybe a couple more, a couple less picks, I don't think it can happen like that. I think we all understand how one pick creates a chain reaction that will affect future picks. So to just make one mock draft kind of misses the point of all this analysis. So I have here my final 4 mock drafts, and this is the last draft content I will be making before the draft, unless something insane happens in the next 48, 50 hours. So we're going to run through these 4 scenarios, and that'll be it. That'll be my final draft content before the draft. Now, quick shout out. I will be going live for the draft. I will be playing a video game on my PC during the draft and streaming it live, and we will be watching the draft together. There will be a delay when I stream on my PC of maybe 20 or 30 seconds, which is more than what happens when I'm on the PS4, but it is what it is. So come watch the draft with me. We're going to do all 3 days, I think. We're going to process every pick, every trade up, every trade down, whatever it may be. We're going to have fun in my stream. So come check me out. I stream on this channel on YouTube, so just wait for the draft and I'll be in there and we're going to figure this out. So, mock drafts, final mock drafts. I settled on these 4, and all 4 of these are basically sticking to a particular theme or scenario. And these 4 drafts are all drafts that I would be personally really happy with. 3 of them I would be happy with no matter what. The last one, one of them, it kind of just depends on some exterior factors. So let's start over here on the left side of things. We are going to go with the pipe dream draft. This is mock draft A. This is the pipe dream. There are certain players in this draft who are projected to go at a certain level. They're projected to go in the top 16. They're projected to go in the first 4 rounds. They're projected to go in the first 2 rounds. They're projected to go here or there. Some of these guys have a little bit of wiggle room to fall way more than people expect. There's one in every draft. There are a few guys in every draft who fall way more than people expect. Some guys get taken earlier than expected, so a few people suffered the negative consequences of that. So this draft is not realistic at all, but while I was running through mock draft simulations, while I was looking at big boards and rankings and stuff like that, I found 1 or 2 scenarios where these guys fell to these slots. Now, I don't think it's going to happen. If we're lucky, one of these players might fall to one of these slots, but more than likely they're going to be gone before these picks come up. But here's the pipe dream. And if this draft or even 1 or 2 picks of this mock draft happen, then know that I am very excited because we are getting tremendous value. All right, first round is Kinlaw, the defensive tackle. To me, Kinlaw should clearly go in the top 16, at least the top 20. He's one of the best, maybe the best defensive tackle in this draft. He could go to the Niners at 13. If he gets past the Niners, I don't see how he gets much further than that. But I was able to simulate one scenario where Kinlaw fell to the 27th pick, and I was able to get him for the Seahawks. So that's the pipe dream for me in the first round. If we get Kinlaw, then we are getting tremendous value. Number 59th overall in this pipe dream draft is Swift, the running back. Probably my favorite running back in this draft. I've been talking about him a lot in a couple of recent streams. If we are to take a running back high, I would really like it to be a guy like Swift. I think he's really good. I think he can add a lot to this offense. Most likely Swift is going to be a first round pick, but I was able to get him in the second round in one or two of my draft simulations, so it's not impossible. Finishing out the second round will be Okwara, the defensive end. He's another guy who I kind of expect to be early second round, maybe even the bottom of the first round. But I was able to find a couple of scenarios where he did fall to the second round, so that would be the ultimate pipe dream for me to bring in him as the pass rusher of the future. All right, third round now. We get down to the bottom of the third round. We have Terrell Lewis, the defensive end from, I think, Alabama. Projected to usually go somewhere in the first two rounds, maybe top third round. There were a couple of simulations I found where he actually fell to the bottom of the third. So Terrell Lewis, defensive end, if he somehow fell this far, this would be a dream come true. Now we're moving on to the fourth round. Bottom of the fourth round, we have Netane Muti, a very talented, very capable, very tough offensive guard who had a lot of injury issues in college. If he had managed to stay healthy in college, he probably would have been a first round pick. Because of his injuries, he might not even go in the first 4 rounds. We don't know, but some team is probably going to value him very highly and take him around the third. But if we could sneak in the fourth round, late in the fourth, and just have him fall to us with our pick at 133, dream come true. Next pick, 144, Bowden. This is the late round receiver that has kind of grown on me lately. Him and Duvernay are the two guys that I like in terms of a late round wide receiver who can also maybe return some punts and kickoffs. I project that he's going to go a good couple dozen picks higher than 144, but there are a lot of receivers in this draft. There's a lot of latitude for players to fall at that position. If Bowden could be that player who's available at that 144 pick, I would be really excited. Final pick of this pipe dream draft involves us trading up using a 2021 pick. You know, like a fifth round or a sixth round pick from 2021. We move up from 214 to 160. So we probably would have to give up a little bit next year, but it would be worth it if we could get Leki Fotu, defensive tackle, I think from Utah. Very much a Seahawks type of player, very much fills a need, even with bringing in Kinlaw. And that concludes the first mock draft that I have here. This is the pipe dream. This is everybody we want just falls. Not going to happen, but maybe one or two picks from it can happen, and it can be part of a really good collection of rookies. All right, that's the pipe dream. Let's move on to some more realistic scenarios. So scenario A, we're going to call this scenario A. This is scenario like Omega. You know, this is the alpha and omega scenario. This is scenario A because this can actually happen within the realm of reality. We're going to call this Let Russ Cook. Because this scenario basically plays into this idea of let's give Wilson the kinds of toys and complementary pieces that he needs to have a 40 touchdown MVP winning 35 point a game season. This is just let's outscore people. And you know, we're not going to ignore the rest of the team. Don't get me wrong, we are going to try to build a better defense. We are going to try to improve the team all around. But Let Russ Cook, mock draft scenario A, puts an emphasis on making sure that Wilson is enabled to be the best version of himself. And I think this is probably my favorite mock because I was able to give Wilson some really nice toys while also improving our defensive line heavily. So in this version of a mock draft, I have Jalen Reagor going 27. He usually falls this far in most mocks I did. Some mocks had him going to the Vikings or Patriots. He pretty much always goes in the first round somewhere in that area, so we should have a good chance to draft him. I like Reagor a lot. I think he would add a lot to this offense. He would immediately be the number 3 receiver over David Moore and the guy we just signed. I can't even remember his damn name, but you guys know who I'm talking about. I'll think about it right after this video uploads, probably. Anyway, Ray Gore would immediately be the number 3 receiver in this offense, and he would be a dynamic threat and make this offense way more dangerous. All right, now we move on to the second round. 59th overall, we take Neville Gallimore, defensive tackle from Oklahoma. Look, to me, there are 2 rules in this draft for the Seahawks. 2 ironclad rules that we cannot violate. Number 1, we need to get at least 1 good receiver for Wilson. We do. And number 2 is we need to address defensive tackles somewhere in the first 2 rounds, because we only have 2, in my opinion, capable defensive tackles on the roster right now. So in this particular mock, I have it Gallimore. He's a very disruptive, very good defensive tackle from Oklahoma. I like him a lot. He might be an early second round pick, so if he could, but it's very realistic he falls to us in the second round, and if he does, I would love to pick him. He would fill a huge need, fill a huge hole, probably make our defense better, improve our rotations. And the next pick in the second round, number 64 overall, also improves our defensive line. We get Yetur Gross-Matos from Penn State, defensive end. This is a guy that a lot of people thought we might get with our first pick, and his draft stock has fallen off a bit lately. It seems possible that he falls to us in the second round. It's possible. And as somebody who would not really like taking him in the first round, if we got him with our last pick, the last pick in the second round, that would be pretty exciting. So that bolsters our defensive line massively with some young talent. Moving on to the third round, we get Isaiah Wilson, offensive tackle. The offensive tackles in this draft are a pretty nebulous thing. You know, there are some guys who are projected to go in the first round, but some people say they're going to go in the third round and vice versa. There's a lot of interesting offensive tackle talent in this draft. Some people really like Josh Jones. Some people really like Becton. Some people really like this guy or that guy. And I've seen mock drafts with some of those guys going early in the first. I've seen them falling to the third. Isaiah Wilson is one of those guys who could really go in the early second, maybe even the late first, but it seems like he has a very good chance of falling to the bottom of the third round, and this would be a tackle of the future to replace either Dwayne Brown or Brandon Shell, depending on what happens next year. That would also be a pick designed to help Wilson, because we do Russell Wilson, that is, because we don't want to leave any holes on this offensive line going from 2020 to 2021. All right, next pick. This name is going to come up a couple more times before we're done here. Leki Fotu, defensive tackle from Utah. I really like this guy. He's a stalwart defensive tackle in the middle. I think we need to add 2 more defensive tackles to this team who are capable of at least playing some snaps in the NFL, because right now we only have 2, in my opinion. Unless you really like DeMarcus Christmas, I think we need 2 good defensive tackles out of this draft. Fotu is very likely to go in this area of the draft, pick number 133. Love to get him here. Number 144, we're moving on down here. We have A.J. Dillon, running back. He's tough, he's big, he runs hard. I think that if we got Dillon in this late stage of the draft, I think this is what, the 5th round or the bottom of the 4th round. I think it's the 5th, 144. I believe that A.J. Dillon would address the running back hole on this roster as good as it needs to be addressed. I still think Carson, Penny, and Homer can carry us through most of the season. I still like those guys. I think that spending a late pick on a guy like A.J. Dillon would bridge the gap and complete our running back depth chart situation. And final pick of this particular mock draft is bringing in Reggie Robinson, cornerback, just a project that seems very Seahawky for Pete Carroll to work on and possibly develop into a starting caliber cornerback over the next year or two, because we don't know what's going to happen with Shaq. We don't know what's going to happen with Dunbar. We don't know if Amadi's the real deal or not. So Reggie Robinson rounds out that draft. And as you can see, with this draft, we're giving Wilson a stud rookie receiver. We're giving Wilson a new running back that I think fits our style of football, and we're also giving him an offensive tackle of the future. If you really want to make Russ cook, you can swap out Fotu with Devin Duvernay and give Wilson two receivers. Or you could swap out Isaiah Wilson and give him maybe Hunter Bryant, because I've seen him slip that far in a few mocks. But I think in the realm of realism, you're not going to go that far with trying to give Wilson more weapons. So this is kind of the realistic version of let Russ cook for me. All right, now we're moving on to mock draft scenario B. And this is the one I don't really like normally. This one, mock draft scenario B, we're calling it plan for 2021. And when I say that, what I mean is two things. One, I don't know if we're going to have a season in 2020. I think we will, but I'm starting to have my doubts. It seems possible that we will not have a season in 2020. If we don't, then obviously that screws up contracts, that screws up rookies, that screws up the rookie class of 2021. I don't know what the hell the NFL is going to do, but it certainly gives you different priorities. And second of all, even if we do have a season, maybe you're the kind of guy who thinks that, Pete Carroll is done and this team is just not going to be able to get to where they need to get with the current coaching staff. And maybe you're thinking, hey, let's just go 8-8 or 7-9 in 2020 so we can get these guys out of here and get some new coaches, some new staff in here. And let's try to focus on winning a Super Bowl in 2021 instead of focusing on trying to build a good team in 2020. Now, I'm not an idiot. I know the team itself is not going to do that, but this is a scenario that, in my opinion, is geared toward making sure the team is on solid footing in 2021. So I want to present this scenario because if it is the case that for one reason or another we don't have a season in 2020, or if 2020 is deprioritized, I like this draft. And we are getting some pretty good talent here either way. It's just a lot of these picks in this particular mock draft will not contribute very much as rookies, or unless a lot of people get hurt, obviously. So this mock draft, number 27 overall, we get Mekhi Becton, offensive tackle. This is a guy who I thought was going to go in the top 10, but then he failed a drug test, and apparently he's overweight. Apparently he weighs a lot. So there's some concern now there. Taking Becton here would be a tremendous value steal, and then you would just hope that he can get his weight under control in his rookie year, and by his sophomore year, he's ready to rock and roll, which is okay for us because we have Dwayne Brown and Brandon Shelf for this one season. And I don't think we're going to have them very much beyond this one season, so it works out pretty well. Second round, we get Raekwon Davis, defensive tackle, I believe from Alabama as well. Really good run-stuffing defensive tackle, very talented. He's like a rich man's Poona Ford. And look, like I said, hell or high water, I think we need to take a defensive tackle in the first two rounds. So Raekwon Davis is the defensive tackle of choice in this particular mock draft. Solid pick. He could help immediately. He's one of those guys who could help immediately. Number 64, and this is an interesting one because Josh Jones could very easily be a first-round pick, but I have seen scenarios where Josh Jones falls to the second round, maybe even the bottom of the second round. If we can get Josh Jones with the last pick in the second round, that's very exciting. That's great value. Again, he is not a player who's going to make big contributions as a rookie unless things go south in 2020 with Shell or Brown, but he can be a tackle of the future. And with this mock draft, we will have solidified the offensive line for years to come beyond 2020, which, hey, that's important. It's just not very exciting for 2020 itself. All right. Third round, we've got Bowden again, a receiver that I've really grown to like. I think he could fill a need. I think he could contribute big as a rookie, so he would be, somebody who's for the long term and the short term. He's just one of those late round receivers that I've really grown attached to in recent mocks. 133, we have Matt Hennessy, the center. This is another guy, I don't know what he would do as a rookie. Maybe he would slot right in as the starter at center, but I think more than likely we would put in BJ Finney and Hennessy would become guard depth. Maybe he would be behind Upati. Maybe he would be behind Phil Haynes. If Phil Haynes doesn't work out or Mike Upati gets hurt, maybe Hennessy plays a bit that way. But it's a pick for the future, and I really like Hennessy. And I think that one way or the other, if we did get him, he would be the center of the future. So I would really like to bring in Matt Hennessy with this late pick, but it would be a pick for the future. Number 144, we have Jonathan Greenard. He was a guy that I scouted a little bit out of Florida, and I really liked him. And for whatever reason, initially I thought he was probably going to be like a third round pick, and lately I've seen him closer to the fifth round, maybe even the sixth round. So it seems like his stock has fallen a little bit, but he's a good speed rusher. I like his effort, and I would really like to get him at 144. And finally, we have the same seventh round or last pick that I had in my last mock, which is 214, Reggie Robinson, the cornerback. And again, Reggie Robinson would certainly be a player I would not expect to make a big contribution as a rookie. You never really would for a seventh round pick anyway, but Reggie Robinson would certainly be a project for the 2021-2022 season. All right, now we're going to get to our final mock draft, and then we're going to call it good. This video's 21 minutes now. We're going to get through this last mock, and that'll be my final draft content for this year before the draft. And this last one is a little more ordinary. If you're a little bit more conservative, a little bit more reasonable, maybe a little bit more mindful of things, this is probably the draft for you. This one is called, quite simply, Draft for Need, because it addresses our obvious needs in a more clear and obvious way, I guess you could say. You know, you look at this team, it's pretty obvious what the issues are. We need a new center. We need new defensive linemen. We might need some help at receiver, depending on what happens with Josh Gordon. You know, this is a little bit more of a traditional draft. I think this is more in line with what is realistic, but only the draft will tell us. So let's blow through this. We have number 1, AJ Epinenza, defensive end. Probably the best defensive end prospect we can get with our first round pick, because, you know, Chase Young is obviously not going to be there. Epinenza, to me, is the defensive end that we could get in the first round who is worth that first round pick. Gross-Matos, to me, not really worth that first round pick. There are one or two other guys that people have talked about, like Okwara or Uchi. I don't think those guys are worth a first round pick. Epinenza, to me, is, and it would not surprise me at all if we went this direction. First pick of the second round for us, number 59, would be Cesar Ruiz. He's a center who could start day one, and that would allow B.J. Finney to play guard. It would allow Phil Haynes to have a blue chip rookie to his probably his immediate left on the offensive line, and I think Ruiz would definitely start day one and be the center of the future. Last pick of the second round, number 64 overall, Terrell Lewis, defensive tackle. I mentioned him in my pipe dream mock of being a third round pick, but more realistically, he's going to go around here. Really good defensive tackle. I like him a lot. High on him, high on his potential. Again, we need a defensive tackle in the first two rounds, in my estimation. This guy could contribute day one. Moving down, we have our third round pick, 101 overall, Bowden. I'm going to keep saying that name. If you personally like Bowden, like the kind of player that Bowden is, but you don't like Bowden specifically, there's always Devin Duvernay. To me, those two guys are fairly interchangeable, but I like Bowden a little bit more from my scouting, which is somewhat limited. I don't watch every game these guys play. Come on, give me a fucking break. But Bowden is good here. Next pick, 133, we're going to use this name again. Leki Fotu, defensive tackle. Even if we take a defensive tackle early, I think we need one more guy, because I only trust two guys currently on the roster to clog the middle the right way, Reed and Puna. Everyone else, trash, until they prove otherwise to me. 144, we have Shane Lemieux, and this is the guard from Oregon, I think. And he was projected in some of my mocks to go in the first round a couple months ago. And now the bottom has dropped out on his draft stock, and now I'm seeing him in the fifth round. So I don't know what happened, but that seems to me like a low-risk, high-reward type pick. So Shane Lemieux, bring him in. If things don't work out with Phil Haynes or Jamarco Jones, then he can be a guard of the future. At the very least, I think you're getting some pretty decent depth with Lemieux. So I would definitely be all for bringing him in at this slot. And final pick, homegrown kid Trey Adams. There was a time when it really looked like Trey Adams could be a first-round pick. He had issues with injuries. He had issues with his play. He's fallen all the way down here to where he could really be a 7th rounder. Look, this draft, we didn't take any tackles, so let's go ahead and take a guy who could be a low risk, high reward flyer. Obviously, there was a time when he was considered to be one of the best offensive linemen in college football. Those times are gone, but there's a little bit of potential here. And that'll do it for me. These are my final 4 mock drafts. This would get me really excited, but I know it's not realistic. This is just the pipe dream, like I said. This is probably my favorite mock draft just because I think our offense would be a high-flying, well-oiled machine if we did this. This is kind of a doomsday scenario one that I don't like, but I accept it might be for the best depending on what goes on in the NFL. And this to me is a realistic mock draft that I like. This is a realistic set of picks we can make. It's not as sexy as this one, but I still really like this one. Now, I could have made mocks of scenarios that I don't like. You know, Jonathan Taylor. If we take Jonathan Taylor in the 1st round, I'm not going to like it. If we take Jonathan Taylor in the 2nd round, I'm not going to like it. Ross Blacklock, not too excited about getting him with our 1st pick, but that seems like a decent possibility. There are some other guys too that I'm really not excited about, but we're going to be positive in this video, guys. We're going to be positive. We're going to stick to these 4 scenarios that I could see myself buying into. So which one do you like better? Do you want to mix and match a couple of these picks with a couple of the other picks from other mocks? Do you have your own mock? What do you think? How should we attack this draft? These are my final draft thoughts. We got about 2 days before the draft kicks off. I'm excited. Everyone get hyped. And that's it from me. Go Hawks. Hope you had fun.